About 2 weeks ago, I made an Arlecchino short talking about my opinions on her as a parent, and to sum it all up, I don't think she's a good parent. That really hasn't changed, but the harshness in which I viewed her has changed. After doing the story quest and listening to her voice lines, today I will be doing an Arlecchino character analysis where I will discuss her as a character, my opinions on her story quest, and the misconceptions I've seen so far. This goes without saying, but there will be spoilers for her story quest in this video. Arlecchino is the fourth Fatui Harbinger, also known as the Knave. She is known as father to the children of the House of Heart, which is an orphanage under the Fatui that trains orphans and makes them into members of the Fatui. Each member has different tasks, from things like information gathering to infiltration to committing murder. Any crime you can think of, they've probably done it. Arlecchino was also raised in the House of Heart, while it was under the rule of Krukabina, who is referred to as mother, the opposite of Arlecchino being referred to as father. Krukabina was a cruel parent who would force the children of the House of Heart to fight each other. The ones that lose, die, and the one that wins is called King. She had her own blood-related daughter named Clairvy, who was best friends with Arlecchino until she made them fight each other, a fight in which Clairvy dies. This death solidifies Arlecchino's will to kill Mother. A year later, she received her pyrovision and killed Mother at the age of 17, who by the way was a Harbinger, so that was very impressive. Even though she killed a Harbinger, the Tsaritsa pardoned her, made her a Harbinger herself, and placed her in charge of the House of Heart, which means she becomes a Harbinger by the age of 17 or 18. She isn't, however, the youngest Harbinger. Child is the youngest, and due to Arlecchino's age, we can assume Child became a Harbinger at presumably 16? Some other information we know about her is that she isn't Fontanian, and there are hints indicating that her origins may lie in Conria, based on her conversation with Piero in her 5th character story. When it comes to her personality, both Child and Wanderer's voice line talk about how she's an untrustworthy person and someone who is willing to do anything to get what she wants, even going as far as to betray the Fatui and subsequently the Tsaritsa, a sentiment that Arlecchino seems to agree with. One of her voice lines states she will go against the Tsaritsa if she has to. Her relationship with the Fatui seems more of an opportunistic one rather than one of camaraderie. I don't think she really cares what the Tsaritsa's vision is, unlike some Fatui members who are very much willing to do anything to get the Tsaritsa what she wants. Arlecchino seems to be more focused on the children of the House of Heart. But despite not really caring for the Fatui and other Harbingers, she seemed to have had a good relationship with Senora and seems to care somewhat for Child's well-being. Hopefully we get to see them interact more in the future. Her personality is very cold, but much more complex than people tend to give her credit for, so I hope Hoyoverse goes deeper into talking about her as a character, not just what she has done. Her story quest, by my expectation of Genshin's story quest, was alright, I guess. It isn't among the worst story quests Hoyoverse has ever written, but when I compare it to the likes of Farina's, Nervalet's, Yumiya's second story quest, and the more recent ones, it lacks a certain oomph to it, and I think the reason why, or at least the main reason why, is because of the animated short. While I thoroughly enjoyed the animated short, and I think they should do more stuff like it, I would have preferred if they had released it after the story quest. It was a big spoiler, and it kind of took away from any plot twists or conflicts they were hoping to achieve. I wish we had learned about Clairvy through the story instead, and given a chance to doubt Arlecchino's treatment and love for the kids, instead of just basically being told beforehand that, oh yeah, she's not the one doing all the bad things Clairvy was talking about, by the way. If you really like Arlecchino, and you somehow haven't watched the animated short yet, you will probably enjoy the story quest way more than I did if you watch the short after doing the story quest. On a slightly unrelated note, maybe I'll make an entire video about this later, but I enjoyed the fact that the Traveler lost. I know a lot of people were annoyed by it, but I was kind of hoping they'd lose. If they won again, it'd get kind of boring. I love the Traveler. Don't get me wrong, I don't hate them. I'm not one of those people that have a profound hatred for the Travelers, but I think it is about time for a training arc. Seeing them be so utterly defeated seems like a good setup for a training arc, and with Natlan being all about war and fighting, what better time and place to level up our strength? And it's just before we get to the Fatui homeland anyways. We're going to Snezhnaya after Natlan, so might as well, train for it. Anyways, back to Arlecchino. When it comes to misconceptions about her character, there are two main ones that I've noticed and two main ones that I'll be talking about today. You may add more in the comment section below. Number 1, the misconception that she's a good parent, and number 2, the one about her not loving her kids. They need to be discussed together because they correlate to each other and kind of work off of each other. While I do not believe Arlecchino is a good parent, the people that call her a good parent tend to water down her character to make her more morally acceptable to justify liking her. You're allowed to like bad characters. It's not a crime. There are people who like Dotari, for God's sakes. You will be fine, I assure you. You don't have to water down and dilute a character's interesting personality and story to make them fit into a box of morality. It is okay if the character that you like is a horrible person. Villains are fun to like, but I also don't think it is fair to say she doesn't love the children of the House of Heart. Her love for them is just different, to say the least. Arlecchino grew up in an abusive setting. Her perception of love is very skewed, and you could make the argument that she's a better parent than her own mother, but that doesn't make her a good parent, especially since we have a reference point for good parents in Genshin, a very recent one actually, the mother of all mothers, Cloud Retainer, who also has adopted children of her own. Arlecchino is trying to be the complete opposite of Kurgabina, but in her efforts of doing so, she's still repeating the cycle of grooming children soldiers for the Fatui. She shows her love for the children by giving them the best tools to survive, by any means possible, and if that includes committing atrocities, so be it. They work for the Fatui, something tells me they don't really have much of a choice. Her love for the children is, as she says, very fatherly. Just like how fathers are strict sometimes to the point where it might feel unjust, they tend to do it from a place of love. They are hard on us because they want the best for us, and to them, there's no better way to prepare your children for the cruel world than to be cruel to them yourself. While this is quite an outdated way of raising children, it is still a manner in which people associate how most fathers raise their children. This doesn't mean Arlecchino is all cruel and she doesn't show any form of genuine care and love for her kids. For example, she turned a game that mother used to make her and her siblings play that was deadly into a fun, happy memory for the children of the House of Heart where no one dies. She turned a horrific memory she had into a beautiful bonding experience for her own children. And she seems very willing to go against the Fatui in the event that they try to hurt her children any more than she already lets them. She does a lot of things for these kids that are good, but at the end of the day, the bad things that she does are really bad, even though they're not entirely her own fault. In conclusion, based on the cards that she has been dealt, she's doing the best she can to help these children live a life, not necessarily a normal life. You can even argue it's not a good life, but it is a life nonetheless. She's giving them a home and a family to belong to, and like every family, there are going to be ones that leave or just don't get along with others for one reason or the other. For that problem, she's willing to work on a solution to help those that want a normal life to get a normal life, if they're willing to work for it. She's willing to let Dottori experiment on her so that her kids, if they want, can have a normal life, and I feel like that justifies her love. Obviously, she loves these kids. If she didn't, she wouldn't do any of that, and I truly believe, based on how she acts, if left to her own devices, and without the interference from the Fatui, I genuinely believe Arlecchino would give those kids a good life. A life she could never have. She's working towards being a better parent, but she's not a good one, and I love that about her. She's a complex character that really shows people's ideas of how children should be raised, and if the end justifies the means, and whatnot. There hasn't been a character that has had the community this talkative in a while. I think the last one may be Farina or something. And it's nice to see us focus on something that is actually about the game for once. I hope Hoiverse continues to expand on her character, and I can't wait to see her again in Shin's Nai. One last thing. The biggest problem with the people that like Arlecchino is there are two types of her fandoms. The people who villainize her to all ends. They make her this evil, despicable creature that has no love, which isn't true. And then there are the people who make her this pure innocent. I feel like these are the same people that just take everything interesting about A and remove it. The Genshin fandom has a habit of taking interesting complex characters with flaws and either focusing solely on their flaws like Wanderer, or justify their crimes and water them down to a shell of their actual character to justify liking less than perfect characters, both of which ruin the character's character. Just because a character does bad things or has done bad things in the past doesn't mean that's all they are, and you're allowed to like less than perfect characters. Villains are just as important as heroes to a story, and a character doesn't have to be good to be loved or well written. Some of my favorite characters of all time have done questionable things in the past. Now, I'm not one to justify horrible actions. You cannot go out of your way to be like, oh, Hoiverse doesn't give us complex characters, and then when they give you complex characters, you water them down. That's just don't do that. Don't do that. If you can't handle a character that has horrible personality traits, you can stick to liking heroes. There's nothing wrong with that. Heroes are fun too. It's okay. Anywho, that's all I have for today. Subscribe and see you whenever.